So I'm Jorge Padilla, I'm chair of Compass Lexecon, and I am delighted to be here in Washington celebrating 20 years of Concurrence. So happy birthday. Concurrence has asked me to talk about the 20 years of the as efficient competitor test. And I plan to expand it a little bit and talk not only about the as efficient competitor test, but also about the as efficient competitor principle. I think that during these 20 years, the as efficient competitor principle, and therefore also the test, has grown to maturity and is now well established. I think that recent case law, recent decisions by the European Court of Justice in Servizio Elettrico Nazionale, Unilever, Super League, I think that consolidate the idea that for a unilateral conduct to be regarded as abusive, it needs to A, distort the competitive process, depart from competition on the merits, and B, generate anti-competitive effects. And the idea of competition on the merits, which was always sort of ill-defined and difficult to understand, has been made concrete by reference to the as efficient competitor principle. You compete on the merits to the extent that an as efficient competitor that doesn't enjoy a position of dominance, but is as efficient otherwise, can replicate what you're doing. When what you're doing as a dominant company makes economic sense, other than for the reason of the exclusion of competitors. And I think that as a matter of economics, that makes perfect sense. It makes sense from a legal viewpoint. I think it's consistent with the case law as it developed over the years, although now has been made much more concrete, but it also makes sense as a matter of economics. Now, the test. The test is an implementation of the as efficient competitor principle that applies fundamentally to pricing cases, when prices are below costs, when incremental prices are below incremental costs, when prices net of discounts are below the relevant measure of cost. The test has been criticized by a number of people. Why? Because in some particular cases, not on predation cases, but in loyalty rebates cases, it's difficult to implement. And it's difficult to implement because we need, in order to flesh it out, to rely on concepts such as the contestable market, and that may be difficult to measure. Well, yes, it is difficult. Guess what? Everything in life is difficult. And if you really want to make sure that your cases don't face difficulties, yet you will try to avoid it. I think it's a bad idea. I think it's a way of implementing a solid notion of the as efficient competitor principle and should be respected. And I hope that when we look back in time, possibly in 20 years' time to this point in time, where we are reconsidering certain issues and where the European Commission is planning to issue guidelines, we think they did the right thing. They didn't avoid the difficulty, they just tried to make sure that they were reducing the scope for this agreement and helping companies and agencies to implement the test. But the important thing is, even if you don't like the test because of its complications, don't throw away the principle. The as efficient competitor principle, in my opinion, and I think that consistently with the case law, is one of the fundamental pillars of Article 102 and the notion of abuse. Again, happy birthday.